Welcome to my channel, African Tales with IK. Let's start video. The Mighty King. Long ago, in the heart of Africa, there was a great kingdom ruled by King Malika. He was a powerful and wise ruler, feared by his enemies and loved by his people. His palace was a marvel built of ivory and gold, with towering spires that seemed to touch the sky. The walls were adorned with precious stones, and the halls echoed with music and laughter. Despite the splendor of his reign, there was one treasure he cherished above all: his only daughter, Princess Zara. She was as beautiful as the morning sun, with eyes like the deep ocean and a heart full of kindness. Though she had everything: jewels, servants, and the finest silks, Zara longed for something beyond riches. She wished to see the world outside the palace, to know the lives of the people in her kingdom. Her father, however, was strict. He believed a princess should remain in the safety of the palace, away from commoners. But Zara's heart was restless. One night, under the silver glow of the moon, she decided to step beyond the golden gates and see the world with her own eyes. She had no idea that her decision would change her fate forever. Beyond the grand palace, past dense forests and wide grasslands, lay a humble village where life was simple yet full of warmth. The villagers worked hard, living off the land and helping one another. Among them was a young blacksmith named Amon. His father had been a great craftsman before him, and Amon had inherited not only his skills but also his resilience. Every day, he would wake up before sunrise and work in his small forge, hammering iron into tools and weapons. Despite his humble background, Amon had dreams larger than the sky. He wanted to create something extraordinary, something that would make his name live forever. But more than that, he wished for love, a kind of love that was pure and boundless. However, love seemed like a distant dream for a poor blacksmith like him. Little did he know that fate was preparing to lead him towards something far greater than he had ever imagined. His quiet life in the village was about to be shaken in ways he could never have expected, and it would all begin with a single unexpected encounter. One evening, disguised in a simple cloak, Princess Zara wandered into the village. Her heart pounded with excitement and fear. She had never seen anything beyond the palace walls, and now, as she walked through the marketplace, she marveled at the simplicity of life here. The air smelled of fresh spices, roasted maize, and burning wood. Children ran barefoot, laughing and playing, while women bartered for fruits and fabric. Then, a rhythmic sound caught her attention, ringing of metal against metal. Following the sound, she found herself in front of a small forge where a young blacksmith was working. His hands, strong and skilled, moved effortlessly as he shaped molten iron into a fine blade. Sweat glistened on his skin, but his focus remained unshaken. Zara had never seen such dedication before. She stepped closer, captivated. Amon sensed her presence and looked up. Their eyes met, one gaze filled with curiosity, the other with surprise. For a moment, time stood still. Neither spoke, yet something unspoken passed between them. It was the beginning of a story neither of them could have imagined. Amon wiped the sweat from his forehead and studied the mysterious young woman before him. She was unlike any villager he had ever seen. Her posture was graceful, her eyes shone with curiosity, and her hands, though covered in a simple cloak, bore rings too delicate for common folk. "Are you lost?" he asked, his deep voice calm yet curious. Zara hesitated. She knew revealing her identity could bring trouble, but she was drawn to this young man in a way she couldn't explain. "I was just passing through," she said finally, her voice soft but confident. Amon nodded, sensing she was hiding something but choosing not to pry. "Would you like to see how a blade is forged?" he offered, eager to share his craft. To his surprise, Zara nodded eagerly. As Amon demonstrated the process, explaining how fire and steel merged to create something strong, Zara listened intently. She realized that, much like the iron in Amon's hands, she too was being shaped by the experiences outside the palace. What she didn't realize was that, in this moment, her fate was being entwined with his in a way neither could escape. Days passed, and Zara found herself returning to the village again and again. She disguised herself each time, escaping the confines of the palace to explore the life she had never known. Each visit, she would find an excuse to stop by Amon's forge. He too began to anticipate her arrival, though he never voiced his thoughts. They spoke about life, dreams, and the meaning of freedom. Amon was fascinated by her wisdom, while Zara was drawn to his passion and strength. For the first time, she felt seen not as a princess, but as a person. Their bond grew stronger with each passing moment, yet an invisible wall stood between them. Zara knew she belonged to a world where love was dictated by politics, and Aman knew his place in society was far below that of a princess. And yet, every time their hands brushed accidentally, or their eyes locked a second too long, an unspoken truth hung in the air, something deeper than friendship, something dangerous. Neither of them was ready to name it, but both could feel it growing stronger with every stolen moment. Zara knew she was playing with fire. Each visit to the village, each conversation with Aman was a risk. If her father discovered her secret, there would be severe consequences not just for her, but for Aman as well. Yet, she couldn't stay away. She had spent her entire life surrounded by luxury, but never had she felt as alive as she did in the simple, humble world of the village. Aman, too, struggled with his emotions. He knew she was special, different from anyone he had ever met, but a voice in his head reminded him of reality. She was royalty, and he was a poor blacksmith. Still, every evening when she returned, his heart betrayed him, hoping she would stay just a little longer. One night, as they sat by the river's edge, Zara sighed deeply. "What do you dream of, Aman?" she asked. He hesitated before answering. "I dream of creating something so great that people remember my name for generations." He paused, looking at her. "And you?" She looked at him, her heart heavy with emotions she couldn't name. "I dream of being free."
But secrets never stay hidden for long. The palace guards had begun to notice Zara's frequent absences, and whispers reached King Malika's ears. At first, he dismissed them. His daughter was obedient, raised to follow the rules. But when a servant reported seeing her slip out of the palace in disguise, his anger erupted like a storm. That night, he summoned his most trusted advisor. "Find out where she goes," ordered, "and bring her back before she disgraces this kingdom." Meanwhile, Zara remained unaware of the growing suspicion. She continued visiting Aman, her heart growing lighter with each meeting. They laughed, shared stories, and dreamed of a world where love was free of status. But in the shadows, palace spies watched her every move. The king's men followed her silently through the winding streets, their hands gripping their weapons. The storm was coming, and neither Zara nor Aman knew that their fragile happiness was about to shatter. The next evening, as Zara made her way back to the palace under the cover of darkness, she sensed something was wrong. The air felt heavy, and an uneasy silence filled the streets. Suddenly, she heard the sound of footsteps too many to ignore. Before she could react, strong hands grabbed her arms. "Princess Zara," a cold voice whispered. Her heart dropped. She struggled, but the guards held her tight. "You have dishonored your father," one of them spat. "You will come with us now." Zara's mind raced. If they knew about Amanith, they even suspected his life would be in danger. "I was only visiting the market," she lied, her voice steady despite her fear. The guards ignored her protests and dragged her back toward the palace. Meanwhile, in the village, Aman waited for her return. He had no idea that his world was about to be turned upside down. Zara was thrown to the marble floor of the palace throne room, her father looming above her like an angry storm. "You dare to defy me?" King Malika's voice thundered, shaking the walls. "Sneaking into the village, mingling with commoners, you bring shame to this family." Zara met his gaze, refusing to cower. "I only sought to understand my people," she said, her voice calm but firm. The king's rage deepened. "A princess does not mix with peasants!" And yet, his eyes narrowed. "I sense there is more. Who have you been meeting?" Zara's heart pounded. She knew the truth could cost Aman his life. "No one," she said quickly. But the king was not convinced. He turned to his guards. "Find the man she's been seeing. Bring him to me." Zara's blood ran cold. "No!" she shouted, but it was too late. The hunt for Aman had begun. The grand hall of the palace was filled with silence as Aman was forced to his knees before King Malika. The flickering torchlight cast long shadows across the polished marble floor. Zara stood beside him, her hands clenched into fists, her heart pounding. "This man has bewitched my daughter," the king declared, his voice echoing through the chamber. "He dared to touch what belongs to the royal bloodline. What punishment should he face?" The courtiers murmured among themselves. Some suggested exile, others whispered about execution. Zara couldn't stay silent any longer. "He has done nothing wrong," she cried, stepping forward. It was my choice to visit the village, my choice to speak to him. But the king's fury did not waver. You are a princess, he said. Your choices are not your own. He turned to Aman. Do you deny your love for my daughter? Aman's jaw tightened. He could lie and save himself, or he could speak the truth. Slowly, he lifted his head, meeting the king's gaze. I love her, he said, his voice steady. And I will not deny it. The hall erupted in gasps. The king's eyes darkened. Then you shall suffer for it. Zara felt something snap inside her. For too long, she had lived under rules that bound her like chains. Now, watching the man she loved being punished for something as pure as love, she could no longer remain silent. She stepped in front of Aman, shielding him with her own body. If you punish him, you punish me too, she declared. The courtiers gasped. No princess had ever defied the king in such a way. King Malika's expression hardened. You would give up everything for a blacksmith? Zara's eyes burned with unshed tears, but her voice was strong. Yes. The king's hands clenched into fists. He'd always believed love was a weakness, a distraction from power. Then you leave me no choice, he said. If you truly love him, you will prove it. He turned to the guards. Banish them both. Let them live in the world they cherish so much. Let them suffer the consequences of defying royalty. The room fell into stunned silence. Aman looked at Zara, his heart torn between gratitude and sorrow. But Zara only reached for his hand, holding it tightly. Then we will build a new life, she whispered. The gates of the kingdom closed behind them as Zara and Aman stepped into the unknown. The weight of exile hung heavy, but Zara did not regret her choice. She had chosen love over privilege, freedom over luxury. Aman squeezed her hand. Are you sure? He asked softly. Zara turned to him, smiling despite the tears in her eyes. I've never been more sure of anything. They wandered through forests and valleys, seeking a place to call home. Villages turned them away, fearful of angering the king, but they did not give up. Finally, deep in the wilderness, they found a quiet land by a river. With Amon's skill and Zara's determination, they built a home brick by brick, dream by dream. Slowly, others joined them, outcasts, wanderers, people seeking freedom from the rules of the old kingdom. A new village was born, one built not on power, but on love, unity, and strength. And at the heart of it all, Zara and Aman stood together, not as a princess and a blacksmith, but as equals, as partners, as two souls who had chosen love above all else. Years passed, and the village flourished. It became a place where people lived freely, without the chains of status and class. Zara and Aman worked side by side, creating something greater than a kingdom, something that could never be taken away. News of their village spread far and wide, even reaching the ears of King Malika. At first, he dismissed it, believing his daughter would soon return, begging for forgiveness. But she never did. One day, an old advisor approached him. Your Majesty, he said, you tried to break them, but they only grew stronger. Is it truly a disgrace to love? The king remained silent. That night, he walked alone through the palace halls, staring at the golden walls that once held his daughter's laughter. He had won his battle, but had he lost his greatest treasure? Love that defied fate. One day, as the sun set over the kingdom, a rider arrived at the village with a message. The king, now old and weary, wished to see his daughter one last time. Zara read the letter, her heart heavy. She had built a life beyond the palace, yet a part of her longed for closure. Aman saw the conflict in her eyes. You should go, he said gently. Not as a princess, but as the woman you have become. And so, she returned not in silks, not in gold, but in simple cloth, a queen of her own making. When she stood before her father, he did not see a rebellious daughter. He saw a woman who had carved her own destiny. With tears in his eyes, he whispered, You have built something greater than my kingdom. And for the first time, King Malika embraced her, not as a ruler, but as a father. Love had not only defied fate, had rewritten it.